So anyway, man, you take that hit of Flocka. This dude, steals your Selly's pictures. He wants to go down there. You're talking about get the knives ready, but then he don't really want to stab the dude. But anyway, you're in the line going after the dude. What happens, bro?
Marcelli, he handed the knife off. I ended up keeping mine. He's in line at the computers. The guy's down there playing chess in the middle of the day room on the table. I go fake watch TV. It got eerily quiet. I was standing at the Mexican TV, so all the Mexicans were staring at me. They seen the lanyard around my wrist from my knife. They seen I was holding the knife up my sleeve. And I just, I did like that. I was just, everybody keep quiet. My homeboy rushes him, hits him with one of them fast pitch baseball punches where you wind all the way back and just come all the way through. Ends up splitting this dude's eye. Blood splashes. He stands up, gets to squaring up with him. I run up and I sink the knife into his back twice. Loudest I ever heard a man scream, top of his lungs. He tries to take off, running up the stairs. I jump on top of him like a monkey, hit him like 6 more times in his back. That's when the COs all rushed in the unit. We had a rookie CO that day, so I had time to run off and dish my knife. Ended up running to the ice machine, was going to put it in there, and then I was actually close with one of the ABs on the yard and ended up running to his cell. He was like, come on, youngster. Went in his cell and flushed it down the toilet there. They secured all of us or whatever. They didn't handcuff us. So walking out the door, they had the black dude standing beside the metal detectors. I socked him one more time, and then we went to the hole. They put the unit on lockdown, did their little investigation or whatever. Come out, you got your little unit snitches or whatever. So the captain was pretty much aware of the whole event, what was going on. He was like, look, you did a just cause. I would have done the same thing if it was my old lady, but you can't stay on my yard, He was like, I'm not going to send you nowhere rough. You don't deserve that, but you got to go. And that leads me to my next prison.
What prison do you end up going to?
The prison after that I went to for about 6 months was actually, like he said, it wasn't going to be a rough prison. It was a dropout yard, Terre Haute. Terre Haute used to be a rockin' penitentiary, but at the time they were transitioning it into a gang dropout / like checkoff yard. When I got there, they were like, you know what type of yard this is, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, yeah, now everybody thinks you got to sign a waiver or whatever to walk the yard. That's not true. So I went out there for about 6 months. Gucci Man was actually on the yard with me there, the rapper. Stayed there about 6 months. I was getting strips in, partnering up with somebody from Washington, D.C. He was supplying me the strips, and I was getting them in through the mail, through books. Had a pretty good run there. Was touching about 60 to 90 strips a month. Ended up putting in for the RDAP program. I had turned 25, so your points dropped 4 points or whatever, and my custody had dropped to medium points. So I was like, okay, I'm going to try to cheat the system, put in for this RDAP program, the residential drug program, get shipped to a medium. All right, so I do that. In the middle of this, I ended up getting caught with 2 Suboxone strips in the chow hall. Had to go to the hole. Now, at this time, I was also being designated for the RDAP program and was still accepted. I was designated to Butner 2 because of the write-up I had got. They redesignated me. I did not know where I was going until I got to Oklahoma. I was on my way to USP Canaan.
Let me ask you a little bit about like prison and politics, and you end up leaving the other prison. You guys hit the black dude. Why do they take you off the yard? I mean, I've seen plenty of assaults. They don't just transfer everybody. But do you think it was because it was a black dude and you're white and you're Selly?
Exactly, because it was an out-of-car issue. Ended up, all of us got shipped, even the Carolina dude.
And you end up, getting strips in, Suboxone, all of that. But you also catch a drug habit in prison, right?
Yes, sir. I ended up turning to the needle during that time. I ended up, I didn't know it at the time, but I ended up catching a incurable virus that ultimately would lead up to my death later in life. Um,
Damn, bro.
so yeah, I was shooting drugs for about 6 months there behind somebody that was claiming he just had cancer or whatever. My cellie, he was also from DC. Turned out, it was a lot worse than what he was leading on to be.
You had a DC prisoner as a cellie?
Correct, yes, sir.
So let me ask you this, because drug addiction's real, even in prison, right? How
Yeah,
how old were you when you went to prison? I know you already told us 18, right?
18, correct, yeah.
Did you have a drug habit before you went to prison?
Never, man. I'd smoke a little pot, got to prison, I had no tattoos. I wasn't very violent, um, not a part of a gang, not a drug addict. And a lot of people look at prison, the system, anyways, looks at it like it's a rehabilitation center for convicts or whatever. You go in there, you get an education and all that. But I didn't come across a single free college program while I was in there where I would have took that opportunity. Um, it definitely, it can make or break you. I've seen some people, it makes them. I feel like it broke me, not in the sense of like it made me. It ruined my life, man. It ruined it.
Well, let me ask you this. You
It
talk
ruined it
about
way worse than what already was. But it also gave me some good moral. It also gave me some morals and principles and values that I could carry away, and that led up to what character I have today. But I look at things in a different light now. I'm very I guess you would call it, I have PTA, I'm very quick to think somebody's out to get me, that everybody's trying to get over on me, hustle me, trying to hurt me, and that's what prison did to my mentality.
I want to ask you, when we talk about mentality, right? You end up with this incurable disease. When you find this out, does it break you down? Do you start crying? I mean,
Oh,
what?
yeah, for sure. But I didn't find out until I was out in the streets. But yeah, it was definitely hard to take on. Yeah.
It's all right, man. It's all right. I mean, people need to hear this, man. There might be some young kid out there that needs to hear this, bro.
It's just something, when you're dealing with needles in prison, they're very scarce and rare to come across. So you might have a single needle for 20 guys in a block that are shooting dope, and that same needle will last you a month. So you're thinking that same needle's going into 20 different people's arms every day for a month,
The addiction was so serious that you're like, man, I just want to get high.
Every morning I'd wake up, and I had an abundance of Suboxone. Uh, I'd have 60, 90 strips just to spare. Wake up, do me like a quarter strip in the morning, smoke me a cigarette, drink me a cup of coffee. Now, if I didn't have it, say, you go to the hole and you're forced to kick the habit, Suboxone is one of the hardest drugs to kick. I say it's harder than fentanyl, heroin, all that because of the longevity of the period of time it takes for it to get out of your system. You will go about 10 days without sleeping, possibly like 4 to 6 hours of sleep. Um, you got the restless leg syndrome, cold sweats, uh, diarrhea, all that. The same effects of heroin, but it just lasts way longer.
So now you're at Canaan. I mean, you don't know about this incurable disease until you get out of prison, but you're at Canaan. What's it like over there for you?
Uh, it's a real deal, man. It's another serious prison. A lot of Latin Kings, a lot of dudes from up north, man. It's a lot of dudes from New York over there. It was about 80 of us on count between the whole Midwest Coalition. I ended up going to the RDAP program over there, trying to get out early. You get a year off your sentence, and then you can get up to a year halfway house. So I was looking at getting out 2 years early. Um, Stayed, kept my nose clean the whole time there, worked out, ended up getting the keys for the Latin folks on that yard. Um, no incidents as far as having to run anybody up top the whole time I was there. Everybody got along. Became a mentor in the drug program and was 2 months shy of getting released and had a fallout with an officer there.
Hey, do me a favor. Turn that fan off real quick.
Oh, okay.
So you end up having a fallout with the officer. What's that about?
Uh, just somebody that thought, they could be funny. It was 6 o'clock in the morning or so, going to breakfast. One of my homeboys, Chino, he was a Cuban. He was like, hey, how about telling my celly that money didn't hit on my books? I guess his celly was supposed to be sending him some money to his account or what have you not. His celly was already in the chow hall and Chino was staying back. So I'm like, all right, yeah, I got you. Spin around, go out the metal detector, and the CO's like, well, how about you suck my dick? And I'm just thrown off because, you never invite somebody to your private parts, especially in prison. So I'm like, well, how about I do you how the last CO got done here, man? And if people know, there was a CO there that got stabbed over 200 times and died recently. So they take that.
Eric Williams.
Yeah, Eric J. Williams, yes, sir. They take that very seriously there. They walk around wearing his hoodies all over the prison. He's very memorialized in that prison. So he was thrown off by what I had said and was like, oh, yeah, that's how you feel? And I'm like, yeah. And I just spin off, go to chow hall, leave it at that, come back, and some dudes were like, hey, man, the CO's been in your cell twice since you've been gone. I'm like, oh, yeah, I go up in there, and it's just like a tornado hit my cell, man. Everything's pulled out of my lockers, linens on the floor, clothes on the floor, radios busted. And I'm 2 months to going home, man, like 2 years early, and nothing mattered more to me than being home with my family and reuniting with my family and friends, the people that had stood beside me. And I had pretty much done a 180 in my life as being a convict. So I let it go, man. I put all my stuff back together, made my bed, got ready for community meeting, which is, what you do in RDEP. Everybody sits down and you meet and greet. And the CO kept mean mugging me. I kept staring back at him or whatever, told a few guys what had happened. Some of them went up to talk to the counselors and told them what was going on or whatever with the CO and me. So they already had a gist of the situation. Well, after community meeting, I'm going upstairs to go into a classroom. I was teaching a class. And my counselor was like, Crabtree, she was like, I heard you've been giving the COs a hard time this morning. And that was just the hair that broke the camel's back, man. I felt like this dude was just out to get me. He was targeting me. I ran down the stairs, and he was sitting right there in front of the CO office at the bottom of the stairs. I begun poking him in his forehead, mushing him in his face, telling him I was going to stab him, I was going to bust him. And he was just like, bro, what are you talking about? Just like he had no idea why I was doing what I was doing. And one of the counselors that knew about what was going on, she was like, Crabtree, come here. But at that point, it was too late. The deuces had been hit. COs was storming the unit. And I ended up going to the hold in.
Let me ask you this, because we're on this topic. We're going to get back there in a second. But you ended up getting the car for the Latin folks. What's it like for a white dude to be the shot caller of a predominantly, Hispanic/black gang in federal prison?
I worked, and I worked for it. I carried myself as such. I was actually given the keys about 2 weeks after my paperwork cleared there. I was more experienced than anybody. I had at the time, I had done more time. It was only about 12 to 15 of us, Latin folks. So I had done more time. I had been to more penitentiaries. I had been involved in more missions than anybody there. So they felt like, maybe, I should be the leader, the role model of them. I took it proudly. It actually meant a lot to me at the time, seeing it as what all I had went through as just being a foot soldier, and I didn't expect it to come. Uh, I had a good group of guys there, though, man, and I eventually, once I had got very involved in the drug program, I passed the keys off shortly around the time that this incident with the CO happened.
So you're
But
in. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
but it is very uncommon and rare for a white to have those type of positions inside of urban gangs. That's correct.
Do they respect you?
For sure, yeah. 100%.
Did the other gangs, other cars respect you?
Yes, sir. Most definitely. But like I said, you had to earn that. It wasn't just given to you.
I mean, you earned it. You could have earned it with losing your life by your own homeboys. You earned it by putting in work where you could have lost your life and ended up with a life sentence. I mean,
Right.
so, but is that what life's all about, man? Is it about being the shot caller, earning that respect? Like, I'm that dude. Or were you thinking bigger and further down the road? Like, you ever said, I guess the better question is this, Dylan. Do you think that life is worth more than being in a gang? You think you're too old for a gang? Too old to be a shot caller?
I mean, in the streets, yes. In prison, man, it's a whole nother lifestyle, man. You really, unless you're like seeing the light at the end of the tunnel, which I had started to see, and which is why I stepped down when I did. Um, I mean, you have nothing but your name and reputation in prison, man. That's all you got, and your word, of course. But that's all you have is what people think about you and know about you in prison. When you go to a different yard, what others are already expecting of you because they've already heard rumors of you. I mean, that's really all you got is your name in there. Once your name is tarnished, you're tarnished throughout the whole system. So people take their name and their reputation very serious behind bars.
I understand that, but is it worth losing your life over?
Oh, most definitely not. No, sir. No,
I got to
sir.
stop you, man. I got to stop. Say that again.
No, sir. It's definitely not worth losing your life over, man. It's just these guys really at the end of the day don't give a shit about you, man. They're not gonna be there when you get out. They're not the ones writing you letters or sending you money when you're locked up. But we tend to, not see through this fog, and we idolize this false love throughout, gangs, or even just being in an independent car, because independent cars are ran just like a gang would be. But yeah, we idolize that false love, man, and we're looking for something that we don't have because our love is in the streets. So I feel like I was seeking that family, that love that I couldn't have because my loved ones were not there with me. But like you're saying, it's definitely not worth losing your life over. It's not worth stretching your time out over, because you're hurting the ones that are out there waiting on you to come home, and yourself.
Through everything that you've been through, I mean, you've been through some violent things. You've been assaulted. You've committed some serious assaults. Not your personal things, but what's one of the worst things you ever seen in there?
The worst thing I ever seen, I think we had discussed before, was a race riot. A race riot at Big Sandy. It was with the Mexican Mafia, the MA, and the Surenos, and it was against the South Blacks. I remember like it was yesterday, man. It was work call. It was AM work call, right when breakfast was closing. And as soon as they called work call, every black was stabbing every Hispanic on the yard simultaneously. It was uncontainable. They were firing live ammunition out the gun towers. People were getting thrown over the tiers. Somebody's hand got cut off. MS-13 cut a black guy's hand off with like a makeshift machete.
What year was this?
This was about 2015, I believe, or 2014. It was over a bell pepper and an onion. I don't know whether the black guy was stealing it or the Spanish guy was stealing it, but it was stashed in the chow hall for them to steal. and the opposition found it and ended up stealing it themselves. And there was already tension going on between them, so that just like escalated their whole situation. But at the end of the day, it was over 4 stamps. You know, a bell pepper and onions, 4 stamps. We being as diverse as my organization is, we're not allowed to partake in race riot or racial issues. So we all convened in one cell. It was like 8 of us in a unit. We all locked down in one cell for about 3 to 4 hours before they were able to contain it. They had ran out of handcuffs, man. They were zip tying guys, uh, hitting guys with beanbag guns, macing them. The deuces would go off on one side, one unit, and then they would be trying to contain that issue. And then the COs would run off to another body alarm call. But they were leaving guys zip tied on the ground with guys that weren't restrained. So those guys that were zip tied on the ground were getting crushed by the guys that had free hands. It was just a mess, bro. We went on lockdown for about 3 months. You know, they let the shot callers walk around the units and tell everybody everything's okay or whatever their instructions may be. SIS does. We went on lockdown 3 months, came up for a week for store, and then the Mexicans struck back at the blacks. Went down on lockdown for another 3 months, and then they pretty much shipped the black hand that was there, which is I guess you would say, the shot caller of the MA or the Surenos. Shipped him, and then after we came off lockdown, they did a huge cleanup, meaning like any of the South guys that didn't ride in that riot, they were making them pack their bags and walk up top to the hole. But that was probably the craziest thing I've ever seen in my life. It's like a war in a half a mile radius, you know? It's just, you got 400, 500 guys just going at it strong. I'd never seen nothing like that and haven't seen nothing like it since.
Let me ask you this. You ever been scared?
Yeah, I was scared that day. I was scared the day that I got beat with the locks. I was scared every time I stabbed somebody, praying that I don't, puncture their lung and collapse their breathing or hit an organ or an artery and they bleed out and I get a life sentence. Scared every time I get to a new prison, man, because you don't know what to expect, what the politics are like, who's running the show, how people are going to feel about you. Scared every day, yeah.
Let me ask you this. When you go to a new prison, right, you walk into R&D. I always used to feel like this, no matter if it's county jail, federal prison. You ever feel this sense of loneliness when you're in R&D? Like, you hear the lights buzzing and, the smell and, there's nothing going on, bag lunches. Do you feel lonely, depressed in that moment?
Yeah, for sure. Like, I'm by myself, yeah. You got the sense of not knowing what's to become once you walk out of this building. I remember when I got to Butner, man, it was storming. And Butner is not a serious prison at all. But it was my first prison, and I was 18 years old. It was thunderstorming that day. And I remember walking across the yard, carrying my green duffel bag, and it was just storming. And you hear the stories in county jail, if anybody tries, you take off on the biggest dude in there or whatever. And I walked in the door and they just like swarmed me. They're like, where are you from? And I'm just thinking like, okay, am I supposed to just take off on one of these dudes? Like, and they started offering me stuff and stuff like that. And they were like, man, it's not like the movies, you can take it. I'm not going to do nothing to you, But, it's definitely scary, bro. Definitely lonely, what you're saying. I used to hate R&D, man. Sitting, in them ankle cuffs, ankle shackles, all that mess. Cold, freezing. You might be sitting up there for 4 to 6 hours, freezing, hungry. Can't use the bathroom really how you want. R&D sucks, yeah.
So look, Dylan, I'm going to get ready to close the show, but there's something I want people to understand, right? I want them to look at your story. You were 18 years old. You went to federal prison. with a big sentence, right? Not no light sentence. It was a big sentence. It's not 20, 30 years, but it still was a big sentence. You go to prison, you're kind of doing the right thing. You end up hanging out with some of the wrong people. You join a gang. Next thing you know, you're in a maximum security prison. You become a drug addict. You end up with an incurable disease. You end up getting hit in the head with locks and beat by your own people, and you almost die. You get mercy flighted. You've been in situations where you could have easily killed somebody and lost your life to prison, where you could have ended up with a life sentence. I mean, this is the story that I think youngsters need to see. But not just see, but I think they need to reflect on it and be like, man, is this the life that I want? Because they got it for you. If this is the life you want, they got it. And you are the guy, Dylan, that should be the example to these people, man.
Right. Basically, bro, I wouldn't wish that life on anybody, man. And it comes with thinking before you act. There's a B, and C thought process, you know, and you can't never leave out that B. You know what's going to happen because of this cause. You always got to think what's going to happen when I do this. Prison will ruin your life, man. Going down that road, it's an eye opener, man. And I pray that all these young kids going down the path that I'm going open their eyes to these videos, your videos, people that are streaming like you. It opens their eyes to make the better choice, to put that pack down, to throw that gun away, to stop the violence. Because I mean, it's only going to get worse from there, man. There's no light doing that type of lifestyle. You know, you're going to get caught, you're going to go to jail, and it's going to get rockier for you throughout that term. If anybody, you know, needs somebody to lean on, they most definitely can contact me for advice or anything like that. I keep you guys in my prayers, you know, keep your heads up, and God bless.
Well, listen, man, I definitely appreciate you coming on, and I want your story to maybe be the story to help people make the right choice. You know what I mean?
Yes, sir. I agree. You know,
and I know you were close with someone, and before we go, Cedric Dean. And I had Cedric on the show a couple times, and look, man, I mean, that dude's a real leader. He's a good dude. But, man, I wish you the best, man, and I hope that things work out for you and somehow that incurable disease thing, man, somehow that gets fixed. I want to see I want to see you do the right thing. I know you got, we didn't get into this, but I know you got a pending case. You're looking at more time, but, man, I hope things work out for you, bro. You had a rough life, a tough life, and I do wish the best for you, all right?
Your prayers, bro. Blessings. Thank you so much.
So I'm going to tell people if they like the video, man, hit that like button. But more than anything, share it, because I think someone needs to see it, man.
Hit that like, subscribe, and share, guys.
Blood on the Razor Wire TV. Until tomorrow, with respect, we're out.